Hello friends. Before we begin tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of those watching aren't subscribed? If these stories give you chills, hit subscribe and comment below with your thoughts. It helps the channel more than you know. Some ranger stations are built to withstand the elements. The Blackwood Station in northwestern Montana was built to withstand something else entirely. For 43 years, it stood 15 miles deep in the Kootenai National Forest, monitoring fire conditions and weather patterns in one of the most remote sections of the Rocky Mountains. 3 rangers staffed it during winter months, rotating in 12-week shifts. On February 9, 2019, all 3 vanished during a routine overnight stay. What makes this case extraordinary isn't just their disappearance. It's what the recovered audio recordings revealed in the hours before they were never seen again. This is the Blackwood Ranger Station incident. Now let's begin. The Blackwood Station sits at an elevation of 7,400 feet, accessible only by a single Forest Service road that becomes completely impassable from November through April. During winter months, rangers are helicoptered in with 3 months of supplies. There's no cell service. Communication happens exclusively through a dedicated radio system connected to the Libby Ranger District headquarters, 42 miles to the west. The station itself is a reinforced 2-story structure built in 1976, designed to handle wind speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour and snowfall measured in feet rather than inches. 4 bedrooms, a command center equipped with meteorological monitoring equipment and fire detection systems, solar panels with diesel backup generators. Everything engineered for complete isolation and self-sufficiency in one of the harshest environments in the continental United States. The building occupies a small clearing carved from dense lodgepole pine forest. To the east, the terrain climbs sharply toward the Continental Divide. To the west, steep valleys drop away into wilderness that hasn't changed in 10,000 years. The nearest human settlement is the town of Troy, Montana, population 938, located 27 miles away as the crow flies, but completely unreachable during winter months, when snow closes the single-access road. When you're stationed at Blackwood between November and April, you are as isolated as any human being can be in the lower 48 states. If something goes wrong, help isn't coming quickly. You handle the situation yourself, or you don't handle it at all. The 3 rangers assigned to the February 2019 rotation were all experienced personnel with extensive backgrounds in wilderness operations. He'd spent 14 winters at Blackwood Station specifically, more than any other ranger in the facility's operational history. His wife, Patricia Walsh, described him in later interviews as someone who genuinely thrived in isolation. He wasn't running from anything. He wasn't hiding. He simply preferred the silence of the mountains to the noise of civilization. Gregory kept meticulous logs of everything, from daily temperature fluctuations to wildlife movement patterns through the surrounding valleys. He photographed unusual cloud formations. He tracked the seasonal migration of elk herds that passed through the area each spring. For Gregory Walsh, Blackwood wasn't an assignment. It was exactly where he wanted to be. The second ranger was meteorologist Dr. Olivia Brennan, aged 38, who had specifically requested the Blackwood assignment to conduct research on high-altitude winter weather systems. She held a doctorate in atmospheric sciences from Colorado State University and had published multiple peer-reviewed papers on mountain microclimate behavior. She'd spent the previous winter conducting research at a station in northern Alaska, working in conditions even more extreme than Montana. Her equipment included multiple digital audio recording devices that ran continuously, capturing ambient environmental sounds for later analysis of storm patterns and wind behavior. Her colleagues at the National Weather Service considered her one of the leading researchers in her field. Montana was supposed to be a relatively comfortable assignment after Alaska. The third member of the team was Ranger Leon Hartley, aged 29, a former wildland firefighter transitioning into winter station operations. He'd spent 6 seasons fighting fires across the western United States, working in conditions most people couldn't imagine surviving. He'd constructed fire breaks by hand while flames advanced through tinder-dry forest. He'd been deployed to major wildfire incidents in California, Oregon, and Idaho. His physical fitness evaluations were consistently rated excellent. His wilderness survival certifications were current and comprehensive. He was exactly the kind of person you wanted on your team if an emergency situation developed in remote backcountry terrain. 3 highly trained professionals with a combined total of more than 40 years of experience in extreme wilderness environments. All 3 vanished in a single night, leaving behind a station that appeared fully operational, and a series of audio recordings that investigators still can't fully explain. The final confirmed radio contact from Blackwood Station came at exactly 11:17 p.m. on February 9, 2019. It was a standard evening weather report. Lead Ranger Gregory Walsh transmitted current wind speed readings, temperature data, barometric pressure measurements, and visibility conditions to the dispatcher at Libby headquarters. His voice on the recording was calm, professional, and completely routine. The transmission lasted 42 seconds. Every word was clear. Every data point was accurate. There was absolutely nothing in Gregory Walsh's voice or the content of his transmission that suggested anything unusual was happening at the station. The next scheduled check-in was set for 6 a.m. the following morning, February 10th. That check-in never happened. At 6:23 a.m. on February 10th, dispatcher Monica Grant attempted to raise Blackwood Station on the regular radio frequency. No response. She tried again at 6:30 a.m. Again, silence. She continued attempting contact every 15 minutes until 8 a.m. Standard Forest Service protocol required 3 consecutive missed check-ins before initiating formal emergency response procedures. But something about the complete silence felt fundamentally wrong to Monica Grant. She'd been working as the primary dispatcher for Blackwood Communications for 11 years. She knew Gregory Walsh personally. In 14 winters of regular contact, he had never missed a scheduled check-in. Not once. Not even during severe weather events or equipment malfunctions. Gregory Walsh was the most reliable ranger she'd ever worked with. By 9 a.m., search and rescue had been officially notified, and emergency protocols were activated. But weather conditions made any immediate response completely impossible. Winds were gusting between 50 and 70 miles per hour across the mountain range. Visibility was reduced to less than a quarter mile due to blowing snow. A major winter storm system was moving through the entire region, dropping heavy snow and creating whiteout conditions. The earliest that helicopter reconnaissance could be safely attempted was February 12th, and even that timeline was dependent on weather improvement. That meant the Rangers at Blackwood Station would remain completely unreachable for at least 48 hours, possibly longer if the storm system stalled over the mountains. Ground-based rescue teams couldn't reach the station either. The single-access road was buried under more than 8 feet of accumulated snow. Even with snowmobiles and tracked vehicles, the terrain was far too dangerous to attempt navigation in zero-visibility whiteout conditions. Search and Rescue Coordinator James Haverson made the decision to wait for weather conditions to improve before deploying any teams. It was the only decision he could make given the circumstances. But in later interviews, Haverson admitted he didn't sleep at all during those 48 hours of waiting. Something felt wrong from the very beginning. The weather finally broke during the early morning hours of February 13th. A helicopter lifted off from the Libby Ranger District at first light, carrying a 4-person search and rescue team toward Blackwood Station. Helicopter pilot Rebecca Sanchez had been flying mountain rescue missions in Montana for 12 years. She'd responded to climbing accidents, avalanche incidents, hypothermia cases, and trauma situations that stayed with her long after the rotor stopped spinning. She'd seen what the mountains could do to human beings when conditions turned deadly. But when she brought her helicopter down onto the landing pad at Blackwood Station on the morning of February 13, 2019, she knew immediately that this situation was different from anything she'd encountered before. The station appeared completely intact from the air. There was no visible structural damage, no signs of fire, no evidence of storm damage to the building or surrounding area. The solar panel array was undisturbed. The generator housing was secure. Smoke was rising from the chimney, indicating that the wood stove inside was actively burning. Fresh snow had accumulated around the building, but the structure itself looked exactly as it should. From an aerial perspective, everything appeared normal. But when the search and rescue team entered the building through the main entrance, they found it completely empty. All 3 rangers were gone. Their personal belongings remained exactly where they should be. Clothing hung in bedroom closets. Boots were lined up neatly near the entrance. Gregory Walsh's reading glasses sat on the command center desk, next to a coffee mug that was still slightly warm to the touch. Dr. Olivia Brennan's laptop computer was open on the common area table, its battery depleted but showing that she'd been working on weather data analysis the evening of February 9th. Leon Hartley's personal journal lay on his bunk in one of the bedrooms. The last entry dated February 9th at 9:45 p.m. He'd written about feeling restless and slightly on edge, but attributed the feeling to normal cabin fever during extended isolation. The wood stove in the main common area was actively burning. Someone had added fresh logs within the past few hours. A full stack of cut firewood sat beside the stove, ready for use. The kitchen showed clear evidence of meal preparation in progress. Ingredients for breakfast were laid out on the counter: eggs, bread, a bag of coffee beans. The coffee machine had been loaded with grounds and water, ready to brew, but never activated. But there were no rangers anywhere in the building. The search and rescue team conducted a thorough sweep of the entire station and the immediately surrounding area. There were no footprints in the snow leading away from the building, no disturbance patterns in the accumulated snow around the structure, no signs of struggle inside any of the rooms, no evidence of forced entry or violent confrontation. The Rangers' essential winter survival gear, absolutely critical for staying alive in sub-zero temperatures, remained hanging on hooks near the main entrance. Their emergency backpacks, equipped with GPS beacons, emergency flares, first aid supplies, and survival equipment, sat completely untouched in the equipment storage room. 3 people cannot simply vanish from a locked building in the middle of a Montana mountain winter without leaving any physical trace whatsoever. But that is exactly what happened at Blackwood Station on the night of February 9, 2019. The investigation into the disappearances began immediately. Within 24 hours of the discovery, federal and state authorities had descended on the remote location. The Federal Bureau of Investigation assigned 2 special agents who specialized in missing persons cases in wilderness areas. The Montana Criminal Investigation Bureau dispatched forensic teams equipped with evidence collection equipment. Cadaver dogs were brought in from 3 different states. Ground-penetrating radar equipment was transported to the site to scan the surrounding terrain for any indication of buried remains. Helicopter overflights covered an expanding radius of 20 miles in all directions from the station. Volunteer search teams organized by local law enforcement combed through the forest in carefully coordinated search patterns. They found absolutely nothing. No tracks, no disturbed areas in the snow, no items of clothing or equipment, no blood evidence, no indication whatsoever that the 3 rangers had left the building at any point after their last confirmed radio transmission at 11:17 p.m. on February 9th. Forensic teams processed every surface inside Blackwood Station with meticulous attention to detail. DNA evidence confirmed that only the 3 missing rangers had been present in the building during the relevant time period. No unknown biological material was discovered, no fingerprints from unidentified individuals, no fibers or trace evidence suggesting the presence of anyone other than Gregory Walsh, Dr. Olivia Brennan, and Leon Hartley. Every door and window was found locked from the inside when search and rescue arrived. There were no signs of forced entry, no indications of struggle or violent confrontation. The physical evidence suggested that the 3 rangers had simply ceased to exist at some point during the night. Psychological profiles were constructed for all 3 missing individuals. Family members, friends, and professional colleagues were interviewed extensively. None of the 3 rangers showed any history of mental health issues, substance abuse problems, or behavioral patterns suggesting they might voluntarily disappear. Their financial records were examined in detail. There were no unusual transactions, no large cash withdrawals, no hidden bank accounts or suspicious financial activity. Their families uniformly insisted that all 3 were stable, professionally satisfied, and had absolutely no reason to stage a disappearance. The surrounding wilderness was searched with extraordinary thoroughness. Ground teams covered more than 40 square miles of terrain over a 3-week period. Cadaver dogs trained to detect human remains found nothing. Thermal imaging equipment deployed from helicopters detected no heat signatures that might indicate bodies or survivors. If the rangers had somehow left the station and succumbed to exposure in the extreme cold, their bodies should have been discovered somewhere within the extensive search radius. They weren't. The audio recordings became the primary focus of the investigation. What investigators discovered during their processing of Blackwood Station was a digital audio recording system that had been running continuously throughout the relevant time period. Dr. Olivia Brennan's meteorological research equipment included multiple sophisticated recording devices designed to capture ambient environmental sounds for later analysis of storm patterns, wind behavior, and atmospheric conditions. These devices ran 24 hours a day, recording everything that occurred inside and around the station. One of those recorders had been active and functioning from February 8th through February 10th, documenting every sound in the building during the critical period when the Rangers disappeared. The audio files were immediately downloaded and transferred to forensic analysis specialists. Most of the recordings contained exactly what investigators expected to hear: normal daily activities, routine conversations, footsteps moving through the building, the sound of meals being prepared, the crackling of the wood stove, wind howling outside the structure. But starting at approximately 8 p.m. on February 9th, the recordings began to capture anomalies. Sounds that didn't fit expected patterns. Voices that shouldn't exist. Phenomena that made investigators request psychological consultations before proceeding further with their analysis. The Forest Service initially classified the complete audio files as restricted evidence. Only portions have been officially released to federal investigators and qualified researchers. What follows is based on detailed transcriptions and analysis reports filed by Special Agent Lauren Dietrich of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, who spent more than 200 hours listening to and analyzing the complete recordings. Her official case file includes precise timestamps, technical audio analysis data, and extensive contextual notes. The following represents the key segments that investigators believe are most relevant to understanding what happened during the final hours before the Rangers vanished. 8:03 p.m. The recording captures normal evening activity inside the station. Gregory Walsh can be heard updating the daily station log at the command center desk, his voice calm and methodical as he notes weather observations and equipment status. Dr. Olivia Brennan is audible in the background, working at her laptop and occasionally speaking aloud as she reviews meteorological data. Leon Hartley is reading in the common area. Conversation between the three Rangers is minimal but comfortable and relaxed. Wind speeds are increasing outside the building, which is typical for evening conditions at that elevation during winter months. Nothing about the audio from this period suggests any concern or unusual circumstances. 8:47 p.m. Leon Hartley speaks up, interrupting the comfortable silence. His exact words recorded clearly on the audio. Does anyone else feel like we're being watched right now? There's a pause of approximately 4 seconds before Gregory Walsh responds that such feelings are completely normal during extended winter rotations at isolated stations, that the human mind tends to play perceptual tricks when deprived of normal social contact for long periods. Dr. Brennan agrees with this assessment, but notes that barometric pressure readings are dropping faster than her forecasting models had predicted. A storm system is intensifying more rapidly than expected. The conversation continues for another 2 minutes, with all three Rangers discussing the approaching weather and reviewing preparation protocols. The topic of feeling watched is not mentioned again. 9:15 p.m. The first clear anomaly appears in the audio recording. A sound is captured that none of the three Rangers verbally acknowledge or respond to in any way. Audio analysis specialists who examined this segment described the sound as a low-frequency tone, operating at approximately 1719 Hz, which places it near the lower threshold of normal human hearing perception. The tone lasts for 11 seconds, then stops abruptly. 5 minutes later, at 9:20 p.m., the same sound occurs again. This time it lasts for 19 seconds. The tone repeats at irregular intervals throughout the next hour, sometimes lasting only a few seconds, other times continuing for nearly a minute. The three Rangers make no verbal reference to hearing this sound during this time period. The later segments of the audio suggest they eventually became aware of it. 9:38 p.m., Dr. Olivia Brennan asks a question that changes the tone of the recording. Does anyone else hear that sound? Gregory Walsh asks what sound she's referring to. She describes it as a humming noise, like heavy machinery running somewhere inside the walls of the building. Leon Hartley says he doesn't hear anything unusual. Gregory Walsh moves through the building checking the generator and other mechanical systems. He reports back 2 minutes later that everything is functioning normally. All equipment is operating within expected parameters. The conversation ends without resolution. But the low-frequency tone continues to appear intermittently on the audio recording throughout the next hour, clearly captured by the sensitive recording equipment, even though the Rangers seem unable to consistently perceive it or agree on whether it's actually present. 10:12 p.m., Gregory Walsh makes his scheduled evening radio contact with Libby headquarters. The transmission is completely routine. He reports current weather conditions, notes the intensifying storm system, confirms that all station systems are operational. His voice is calm and professional. There's no mention of anything unusual, no indication of concern. After completing the transmission and signing off, he's heard telling Dr. Brennan and Leon that he's going to bed. Dr. Brennan responds that she'll stay up for another hour to monitor the developing storm system and record additional data. Leon says he'll maintain the fire in the wood stove for a while longer before turning in. 10:34 p.m. Dr. Olivia Brennan's voice, quiet and apparently speaking to herself. That's not possible. There is no context provided, no follow-up statement, no explanation. Just those 3 words, spoken quietly, almost as if she's reacting to something she's seeing on her laptop screen or in her data. Neither of the other Rangers responds, suggesting they didn't hear her or she wasn't addressing them directly. 10:51 p.m. Leon Hartley speaks, his tone confused and uncertain. Olivia, why are you standing in the hallway? Dr. Brennan responds immediately from the common area, her voice coming from a completely different location based on audio positioning analysis. I'm not in the hallway, I'm right here at the table. There's a pause of approximately 6 seconds. Then Leon's voice again, now carrying a distinct edge of alarm. Then who the hell is standing in the hallway right now? This is the point where the audio recordings become extremely difficult to explain through conventional means. 10:52 p.m. Multiple sets of footsteps are clearly audible on the recording. Audio analysis identifies 3 distinct movement patterns converging in the station's main hallway area. The footsteps match the expected characteristics of the 3 Rangers moving quickly through the building, but then a 4th set of footsteps becomes audible. These steps are measurably slower, heavier, and do not match the gait patterns or weight distribution of any of the 3 known individuals in the building. Dr. Brennan's voice, now tense and elevated. There's no one else here. The door is locked. I'm looking directly at it right now. Someone is standing in the hallway. Gregory Walsh, apparently awakened by the commotion. What's going on out here? Dr. Brennan, there's someone in the hallway. That's impossible. We're the only 3 people in this building. The recording continues for approximately 43 seconds, with overlapping voices, confusion, and rapidly escalating tension. All 3 Rangers are speaking over each other, their voices showing clear signs of stress and alarm. Then Leon Hartley says something that appears to silence the others completely. It's looking directly at me right now. 10:54 p.m. A new sound enters the audio recording. Initial analysis by Forest Service technicians classified it as wind noise, possibly created by the intensifying storm outside. But detailed frequency analysis revealed acoustic properties that are inconsistent with natural environmental sounds or weather phenomena. The sound is rhythmic, pulsing at regular intervals. It grows steadily louder, following a pattern that suggests deliberate modulation rather than random atmospheric fluctuation. The frequency signature doesn't match any known natural or mechanical sound source. Dr. Brennan's voice, do you both hear that now? And Gregory Walsh, yes, I hear it. Leon Hartley doesn't respond verbally, but his breathing is clearly audible on the recording, rapid and shallow, consistent with acute stress response. 10:56 p.m. The anomalous sound stops abruptly. Complete silence follows for approximately 9 seconds, which is itself unusual given the constant background noise of wind and the wood stove that characterizes the rest of the recording. Then Gregory Walsh, it's gone now. What was that? I don't know, but that wasn't human. That wasn't anything human. 11:02 p.m. The 3 Rangers begin discussing rational explanations for what they experienced. Gregory Walsh suggests exhaustion, isolation-induced hallucination, or possible carbon monoxide exposure from the wood stove, affecting their perceptions. Dr. Brennan immediately checks the carbon monoxide detectors mounted throughout the building. She reports that all detectors are functioning normally and showing no elevated readings whatsoever. Leon Hartley proposes that someone could have somehow entered the station while they were asleep earlier in the day. But Gregory Walsh points out that this is functionally impossible, given that all doors are locked from inside, and there are no tracks whatsoever in the snow outside the building. 11:17 p.m. Gregory Walsh makes his final radio transmission to Libby headquarters. His voice is steady and professional. He reports routine weather data and current conditions. The transmission is identical in tone and content to hundreds of previous check-ins. There is no mention whatsoever of the incident that occurred less than 30 minutes earlier. After completing the transmission and signing off, He tells Dr. Brennan and Leon that they will discuss what happened in the morning after everyone has gotten some rest, that fatigue and prolonged isolation can cause various perceptual anomalies, and that they should all try to sleep. His tone is calm and rational, clearly attempting to de-escalate the situation. The recording captures sounds of the three rangers preparing for bed, doors closing, water running briefly in the bathroom, the wood stove being stoked with additional logs. Then the station settles into relative quiet, with only the ambient sounds of the building and the storm outside remaining audible. But the low-frequency tone returns, and it's no longer intermittent. 12:34 a.m., February 10th. All three rangers should be asleep at this point. The station is dark, except for minimal emergency lighting. The recording captures only environmental sounds, wind buffeting the exterior walls, the occasional creak of the building's wooden structure, adjusting to temperature changes, the soft crackle of burning wood in the stove. The low-frequency tone that appeared intermittently earlier in the evening is now present continuously, a steady drone just at the edge of audibility. Then a voice speaks. It's captured with perfect clarity on Dr. Brennan's recording equipment. A male voice, speaking three words with absolute distinctness. They are here. Forensic audio analysis conducted by the FBI's technical laboratory in Quantico confirmed that this voice did not match any known recordings of Gregory Walsh, Leon Hartley, or any other individual on file. The acoustic signature was described in the technical report as anomalous and inconsistent with standard human vocalization patterns. There are no natural breath sounds preceding or following the statement, no ambient mouth sounds or slight variations in tone that characterize normal human speech, just the three words, isolated and clear, spoken as if directly into the recording device from a distance of less than 2 feet. 12:36 a.m., footsteps become audible. Multiple sets, moving through different areas of the station. The movement patterns suggest that all three rangers are awake and moving purposefully through the building, but no voices are recorded during this time. No conversations, no questions or statements, just footsteps and the sounds of doors opening and closing. The movement continues for approximately 4 minutes, without any verbal communication whatsoever between the three individuals. 12:40 a.m. A sound occurs that investigators and audio specialists have struggled to adequately classify or explain. The closest description that appears in official forensic reports, similar to the sound of glass breaking, but in reverse sequence. A sharp crystalline noise that begins at high volume and diminishes rapidly into silence, rather than starting quiet and building to a crescendo like normal breaking glass. The sound is heard 3 times in succession, each occurrence separated by exactly 5 seconds. Audio analysis confirms these are not mechanical sounds, not environmental sounds, and not consistent with any known natural acoustic phenomenon. 12:41 a.m., Gregory Walsh's voice, strained and barely audible as if speaking through extreme physical or psychological stress. This isn't real. This can't be real. There is no response from either Dr. Brennan or Leon Hartley. No acknowledgement of his statement. The footsteps continue moving through the building, but no other voices are captured. 12:42 a.m. Absolute silence. The wind stops. The crackling of the fire ceases. The low-frequency tone that had been present continuously vanishes. Every ambient sound disappears simultaneously. The recording captures 11 seconds of complete acoustic void, as if the building and everything in it has been placed in a perfect vacuum. Then the recording equipment fails. The digital audio file shows a complete gap in the data from 12:42 a.m. to 6:17 a.m. on February 10th. Nearly 6 hours of missing recording. Forensic analysis of the recording device conducted by 3 separate independent technical laboratories revealed no mechanical failure, no electrical malfunction, no file corruption, and no evidence of physical tampering. The device was examined at the component level. The memory storage was analyzed in detail. The power systems were tested exhaustively. Every technical specialist who examined the equipment reached the same conclusion. There was no technical reason for the recording gap to exist. The device simply stopped recording at exactly 12:42 a.m. and resumed recording at exactly 6:17 a.m., as if those 6 hours had never occurred. The battery showed appropriate power consumption for continuous operation throughout the entire period. The internal clock maintained accurate time. The file structure showed no corruption or missing data blocks. The recording just stopped, and then started again 6 hours later. What the device captured when it resumed recording at 6:17 a.m. was somehow more disturbing than the gap itself. The wood stove was burning strongly. Audio characteristics of the fire indicate that fresh logs had been added within the previous hour. The fire was being actively maintained by someone. Wind sounds outside the building had returned to normal patterns consistent with the ongoing storm. The station sounded occupied and functional. Movement sounds consistent with routine activities are clearly audible. Cabinet doors opening in the kitchen. Items being placed on counters. Water running briefly from the sink. The sounds of breakfast preparation, but there are no voices, no footsteps, no identifiable human movement patterns. Just the sounds of activities being performed in complete silence. The recording continued until the device's battery was finally exhausted at 2:34 p.m. on February 10th. 8 hours and 17 minutes of audio capture in a station that sounded actively occupied, with the fire being maintained and food apparently being prepared, but without a single human voice, without identifiable footsteps, without any acoustic evidence that actual people were present and performing these activities. When the search and rescue team arrived on the morning of February 13th, they found exactly what the audio suggested, a station that appeared to have been occupied and maintained until very recently, but completely empty of any human presence. The official investigation into the Blackwood Ranger Station disappearances involved multiple federal and state agencies and continued for 14 months. Every aspect of the case was examined with exhaustive attention to detail. Theories were proposed, tested, and evaluated. Evidence was collected, analyzed, and cross-referenced. The case file eventually exceeded 4,000 pages of documentation. Forensic audio specialists from the FBI, the National Security Agency, and 3 major universities analyzed the recovered recordings. The low-frequency tones captured throughout the evening of February 9th were confirmed as real, measurable acoustic phenomena, not equipment artifacts or recording errors. But their source could not be determined. No mechanical system at the station, no environmental condition, and no known natural phenomenon could account for the specific frequency signatures captured on the recordings. The voice recorded at 12:34 a.m., saying "they are here," was analyzed by linguistic specialists, voice identification experts, and acoustic engineers. The voice did not match any individual in law enforcement databases. The acoustic properties were described in technical reports as outside normal parameters for human vocalization. One specialist noted that the voice lacked certain harmonic overtones that are universally present in human speech due to the physical structure of the vocal tract and resonance chambers. The voice, according to technical analysis, should not be physically possible to produce with human anatomy. The crystalline breaking sounds recorded at 12:40 a.m. were subjected to spectral analysis. The reverse time characteristics were confirmed as genuine, not the result of audio editing or playback manipulation. But no explanation could be provided for how such sounds could occur naturally or what might have produced them. The 6-hour recording gap, from 12:42 a.m. to 6:17 a.m., remained completely unexplained. Despite intensive technical investigation, multiple forensic specialists from different disciplines examined the recording equipment, and all reached the same frustrating conclusion. The device was functioning properly, but the data for those 6 hours simply did not exist. The sounds of activity during the final 8 hours of recording, from 6:17 a.m. to 2:34 p.m. on February 10th, were analyzed for any indication of who or what was maintaining the fire and apparently preparing food. Audio experts confirmed that the sounds were consistent with such activities being performed, but could identify no footsteps, no breathing sounds, no human vocalizations, and no other acoustic signatures that would indicate actual people were present. Over the 14-month course of the official investigation, multiple theories were proposed to explain the disappearances. Theory 1. Voluntary disappearance. Investigators initially considered the possibility that all 3 rangers had coordinated their own vanishing, perhaps to escape personal circumstances or begin new lives elsewhere. Financial records were examined in exhaustive detail. Bank accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios, loan histories, and cash transaction patterns were all analyzed. No unusual activity was discovered. No large withdrawals. No hidden accounts. No evidence of financial preparation for disappearing. Family members maintained regular contact with all 3 rangers up until February 9th, and reported nothing suspicious or concerning in their communications. Most critically, the Rangers had left behind all their winter survival gear. In temperatures well below zero, leaving the station without proper equipment would constitute suicide within hours. If they had planned to leave voluntarily, they would have taken their gear. Theory 2. Abduction. The possibility that an outside party had entered the station and forcibly removed the 3 Rangers was examined thoroughly. But the logistics made this scenario functionally impossible. The only practical access to Blackwood Station during winter is by helicopter or an extremely difficult and dangerous overland trek through more than 8 feet of snow. Federal Aviation Administration records showed no helicopter activity in that area on February 9th or 10th, other than routine Forest Service flights that occurred days before the disappearance. Ground access would have required a large team with specialized equipment and would have left obvious tracks and disturbance patterns in the snow. No such evidence was found. The main door was locked from inside when search and rescue arrived. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere in the building. No evidence of physical struggle in any room. Abduction by outside parties did not fit the physical evidence. Theory 3. Environmental disorientation. Some specialists propose that unusual atmospheric conditions, possibly related to the intensifying storm system, might have caused all 3 Rangers to become simultaneously disoriented and leave the building in a confused state. This theory attempted to explain why they might have wandered away without proper gear, but multiple problems made this explanation untenable. First, all 3 were experienced wilderness professionals specifically trained to recognize and resist environmental disorientation. Second, there were no tracks leading away from the building in any direction. Third, the audio recordings clearly show the Rangers discussing the situation rationally and methodically up until the final transmission. Fourth, for all 3 to simultaneously succumb to identical disorientation, severe enough to cause them to leave without survival gear, strains credibility beyond the breaking point. Theory 4. Mass psychological event. Psychologists consulted on the case suggested the possibility of a shared psychological break, possibly induced by isolation stress, where all 3 Rangers experienced simultaneous delusions or hallucinations, severe enough to cause them to take irrational actions. But this theory failed to account for the physical evidence. If the Rangers had experienced psychological breaks severe enough to cause them to leave the station without gear, their bodies would have been found nearby, victims of rapid hypothermia. The extensive searches found nothing. Additionally, the audio recordings show the Rangers attempting to rationalize and explain their experiences, not exhibiting symptoms of delusional thinking. Theory 5. Unknown factors. A small number of investigators, speaking strictly off the record and with explicit requests for anonymity, suggested that the totality of evidence pointed towards explanatory factors outside conventional understanding. The audio anomalies, the impossible voice, the recording gap, the sounds of continued activity after the Rangers vanished, the complete absence of physical evidence. These elements, considered together, did not fit any standard investigative framework, but without concrete evidence pointing towards specific alternative explanations, this remained speculation rather than an actionable investigative direction. No theory successfully accounted for all the evidence. The case remained open and unresolved. During the investigation, researchers examining historical records discovered that Blackwood Station had a documented history of unusual incidents that had not been widely discussed or compiled into any comprehensive record. Over its 43 years of operation, prior to 2019, there had been 17 separate formal reports filed by Rangers describing experiences that fell outside normal operational parameters. Individually, each incident had been noted, filed, and largely forgotten. Taken together, they suggested a pattern. In August 1982, Summer Ranger Vincent Carmichael filed a report describing voices he heard outside the station during a night watch shift. He described them as conversations happening just beyond the tree line, close enough to be clearly audible, but too distant to understand specific words. When he investigated with a high-powered flashlight, he found no one, no tracks, no evidence of people in the area. The voices stopped the moment he stepped outside. His report was filed and officially classified as auditory pareidolia, the psychological phenomenon where the human brain creates patterns in random sounds. In January 1991, the Winter Ranger team filed multiple reports over a 3-week period describing objects in the station being moved or rearranged overnight. food items relocated from storage shelves to kitchen counters, tools found in different rooms from where they'd been left, equipment moved from secure storage to common areas. The Rangers initially suspected each other, then realized none of them were responsible for the relocations. The incidents continued for 3 weeks, then stopped completely without explanation. No official conclusion was ever documented. In November 2003, a meteorologist stationed at Blackwood photographed what she described as geometric light formations that had no identifiable source during a severe overnight storm. Her photographs, preserved in a case file, showed regular patterns of illumination in the snow surrounding the station, as if light was emanating from beneath the surface. When she went outside the following morning to examine the location, the patterns had vanished, and the snow appeared completely undisturbed. Her photographs were examined by technical specialists and officially classified as probable ice crystal formations, reflecting moonlight at unusual angles, though the geometric regularity of the patterns was never adequately explained. In February 2011, Rangers at Blackwood reported that their radio transmissions to Libby headquarters were being echoed back to them with a precise delay of 7 seconds. Every transmission they sent would return to them 7 seconds later, not as feedback or atmospheric bounce, but as a distinct repetition. The phenomenon lasted for 2 consecutive days, then resolved spontaneously. Equipment diagnostics conducted after the event found no technical faults or explanation for the echo behavior. In October 2015, a ranger reported waking at 3 a.m. to find all the clocks in the station stopped at exactly the same time. 12:42 a.m., digital clocks, mechanical clocks, battery-powered watches, all frozen at 12:42. When he checked the command center equipment, which was connected to atomic time signals via satellite, it showed the correct time of 3 a.m. The clocks resumed normal function the following day without intervention. These incidents, and 12 others documented in Forest Service records, were spread across more than 4 decades. Viewed collectively, they suggested that Blackwood Station occupied a location where normal physical rules occasionally failed to apply in ways that could not be easily explained. The families of the 3 missing Rangers waited for answers that never came. Patricia Walsh, Gregory's wife of 27 years, maintained constant contact with investigators throughout the entire 14-month investigation. She provided photographs, personal documents, medical records, and sat through multiple interviews describing her husband's state of mind, his habits, his routines, and anything else that might provide insight into what happened. In an interview conducted 6 months after the disappearance, she said, "Gregory loved those mountains. He loved that station. He wasn't running from anything. He wasn't hiding from life. He was exactly where he wanted to be. Whatever happened to him up there, it wasn't because he wanted to leave." Dr. Olivia Brennan's parents, both retired professors living in Seattle, struggled to comprehend how their daughter could simply vanish from a locked building in a thoroughly documented location. Her father, Dr. Raymond Brennan, a physicist, became obsessed with the audio recordings. He filed multiple Freedom of Information Act requests seeking access to the complete files. In a letter written to the FBI that was later included in the case file, he stated, "My daughter was a scientist. She documented everything. She recorded everything. The answers are in those audio files. Something is being overlooked or deliberately ignored. She would want the truth found, regardless of how uncomfortable that truth might be." Leon Hartley's sister, Amanda Hartley Cruz, organized volunteer search efforts that continued long after official operations were scaled back. She coordinated with local hiking clubs, Menton Rescue volunteers, and private search organizations. Groups of volunteers conducted systematic searches of the area surrounding Blackwood Station during summer months when the terrain was accessible. Over 3 consecutive years, more than 200 volunteers participated in these efforts, covering hundreds of square miles of wilderness. They found nothing. Not a single item of equipment, not a scrap of clothing, not any trace whatsoever of Leon Hartley or his colleagues. The emotional toll on the families was documented in victim advocate reports filed with the investigation. The complete absence of answers, the lack of closure, the inability to even confirm whether their loved ones were alive or dead, created a psychological burden that several family members described as unbearable. Patricia Walsh required ongoing psychological counseling. Dr. Brennan's mother was hospitalized twice for stress-related medical issues. Amanda Hartley Cruz told investigators that the not knowing was worse than any definitive answer could possibly be, even if that answer was the worst possible news. In August 2020, 18 months after the disappearances, the United States Forest Service made the decision to permanently decommission Blackwood Station. The official statement cited operational and logistical concerns and announced that winter fire monitoring and weather observation functions would be relocated to other facilities in the region. The statement made no specific reference to the February 2019 incident, but the timing made the connection obvious to anyone following the case. Environmental groups and some local government officials objected to the closure, arguing that the station provided critical data collection for fire management and that decades of continuous weather records from that specific location had scientific value that would be lost. The Forest Service acknowledged these concerns, but maintained that operational decisions were based on comprehensive risk assessment and resource allocation analysis. No further explanation was provided. The building itself was not demolished or removed. It remains standing at its location 15 miles deep in the Kootenay National Forest, all equipment and furnishings left in place, but with all systems deactivated. Solar panels disconnected, generators drained of fuel, radio equipment powered down. The main door was locked and secured with additional reinforcement. Signs were posted warning that the structure was closed, Forest Service property, and that unauthorized entry was prohibited. No personnel have been assigned to Blackwood Station since February 2019. The structure sits empty and isolated, slowly being reclaimed by the wilderness that surrounds it. Despite official decommissioning and legal prohibitions against accessing the site, Blackwood Station has attracted attention from hikers, adventure seekers, and individuals interested in unexplained phenomena. The remote location and difficult access during most of the year limit the number of people who actually reach the site, but enough have made the journey that unofficial reports have accumulated. These reports are unverified, anecdotal, and documented primarily through social media posts, online forums, and conversations with local residents in nearby towns. They cannot be confirmed through official sources and should be understood as hearsay rather than established fact. But the consistency of certain details across multiple independent reports is noteworthy. Multiple hikers who've approached Blackwood Station during summer months report seeing lights visible through the windows after dark, despite the fact that all electrical systems were disconnected and the solar panels were disabled when the station was closed. The lights are described as yellow-orange, consistent with oil lamps or firelight, moving slowly through different rooms as if someone is carrying a light source through the building. Several witnesses report watching these lights for extended periods, sometimes for more than an hour, before they fade and disappear. Amateur radio operators in Montana and northern Idaho have reported occasionally receiving fragmentary transmissions on the frequency that was historically used for Blackwood Station communications. The transmissions are described as brief, heavily distorted by static, and often consisting of partial weather reports or incomplete status updates. The voices are male. The format matches historical Forest Service radio protocols, but the content is often nonsensical or consists of data readings that don't correspond to actual current conditions. When radio operators attempt to respond to these transmissions or request identification, the signals immediately cease. Hikers who have camped within a mile of Blackwood Station overnight report hearing sounds they describe as footsteps on the exterior wooden deck of the building, occurring between midnight and dawn. Some describe hearing the station's door opening and closing, metal hinges creaking audibly in the mountain silence. A few report hearing voices described as conversation-like sounds coming from inside the building, though no words can be distinguished clearly enough to understand what is being said. Two separate hiking groups, one in summer 2021 and another in summer 2023, reported approaching Blackwood Station during daylight hours and seeing smoke rising from the chimney, indicating that the wood stove was burning inside. Both groups were aware that the station was closed and abandoned. Both groups observed the smoke for several minutes before it dissipated and ceased. When they entered the building through an unlocked window to investigate, they found the wood stove completely cold with no evidence of recent use. Again, these reports are unverified and unofficial. They represent anecdotal accounts that cannot be substantiated through official investigation, but their existence and their consistency across multiple independent witnesses have become part of the larger narrative surrounding Blackwood Station. The official case files for the Blackwood Ranger Station disappearances remain open. Gregory Walsh, Dr. Olivia Brennan, and Leon Hartley are still listed as missing persons in federal and state databases. The FBI maintains an active case number. The Montana Criminal Investigation Bureau has not closed its file, but active investigative work effectively ceased in April 2021 when the final forensic reports were completed and filed. Special Agent Lauren Dietrich, the FBI analyst who spent more than 200 hours analyzing the audio recordings, submitted her final report to the case file in March 2021. The report ran to 73 pages of detailed analysis, technical findings, and professional assessment. Her concluding statement, included in the official record, reads, "The audio evidence recovered from Blackwood Station documents phenomena that cannot be adequately explained within current investigative and scientific frameworks. The voice recording at 12:34 a.m. exhibits acoustic properties inconsistent with human vocalization. The 6-hour recording gap occurred without any identifiable technical failure. The sounds recorded between 6:17 a.m. and 2:34 p.m. on February 10th suggest activity without identifiable human presence. While multiple explanatory theories have been proposed and evaluated, none successfully account for the totality of documented evidence. This case remains unresolved and presents significant challenges to conventional analysis. Recommend continued monitoring of location and cross-reference with similar incidents in remote installations." That recommendation was never implemented. No monitoring system was installed at Blackwood Station. No comparative analysis of similar cases was conducted beyond initial research into the station's historical incident reports. The case exists in official limbo, not closed, but not actively investigated. The files remain accessible to qualified researchers with appropriate clearances, but few have requested access since the investigation concluded. The story of what happened at Blackwood Station on February 9th and 10th, 2019, has largely faded from public attention, except among those specifically interested in unexplained disappearances and anomalous phenomena. Monica Grant, the dispatcher who first noticed the missed check-ins on the morning of February 10th, 2019, continued working for the Forest Service for 18 months after the incident. In September 2020, she submitted her retirement paperwork, leaving the service after 23 years of employment. In an interview conducted for a small regional newspaper in Montana, published in November 2020, she provided rare public comments about the case. "I worked those radio communications for 11 years, she told the reporter. "I knew Gregory Welsh's voice as well as I knew my own husband's. I knew his patterns, his speech rhythms, his way of phrasing things. That last transmission on the night of February 9th was completely normal. His voice was calm. Everything was routine. There was nothing that suggested anything wrong was about to happen. But the next morning, when he didn't answer at 6 a.m., I knew immediately that something terrible had occurred. I just knew. You develop instincts working these mountains for as long as I did. You can feel when something is wrong even before you have proof." The reporter asked if she believed the 3 rangers were still alive somewhere. Her response, "No, I don't believe they're alive. I think whatever happened to them that night was final. I think they're gone in a way we don't fully understand and can't properly investigate. I think Blackwood Station is a place where something exists that we don't have explanations for. I know how that sounds. I know people will think I'm being superstitious or irrational, but I listened to excerpts from those audio recordings. I heard things that shouldn't exist. And I'll tell you something else. I'm glad they closed that station. I don't think anyone should be sent there again. Ever." Monica Grant declined all subsequent interview requests. She moved out of Montana in early 2021. Her current location is not publicly known. As of 2025, 6 years after the disappearances, Blackwood Station remains closed and abandoned. The Forest Service has made no announcements regarding any plans to reopen the facility or resume operations at that location. The building continues to stand in its isolated clearing, gradually weathering and deteriorating, but still structurally intact. The 3 missing rangers have never been found. No remains, no equipment, no trace of their presence anywhere beyond the walls of Blackwood Station. Patricia Walsh, Gregory's widow, passed away in 2023 from cancer, having never received answers about what happened to her husband. Dr. Olivia Brennan's parents continue to advocate for renewed investigation, though their efforts have gained little traction with authorities. Amanda Hartley Cruz, Weon's sister, maintains a website dedicated to the case, posting updates and organizing occasional volunteer search efforts during summer months. The complete audio recordings remain classified. Only the excerpts and transcriptions included in official investigative reports have been made available to researchers and journalists. Multiple Freedom of Information Act requests seeking full release of the audio files have been denied, with the Forest Service citing ongoing investigation status and privacy concerns for the missing individuals' families. Critics argued that this classification prevents independent analysis that might provide new insights. Supporters of the classification maintain that the recordings contain sensitive information that should not be publicly released. The case occasionally resurfaces in true crime forums, unexplained mystery podcasts, and online discussions of paranormal phenomena, but it has never achieved widespread public attention. Most people have never heard of Blackwood Station or the 3 rangers who vanished there. The story exists primarily in specialized communities interested in unexplained disappearances and anomalous events. The official position of federal and state authorities remains unchanged. Gregory Walsh, Dr. Olivia Brennan, and Leon Hartley disappeared from Blackwood Ranger Station under circumstances that have not been adequately explained. The investigation is technically open, but not actively pursued. No suspects exist. No explanatory theory has been conclusively established. The case remains unsolved. The families of Gregory Walsh, Dr. Olivia Brennan, and Leon Hartley established a memorial fund in their names in late 2020. The fund provides support for wilderness search and rescue operations and contributes to training programs for personnel working in remote locations. Each year on February 9th, a small gathering is held in the town of Libby, Montana, to remember the 3 missing rangers and maintain awareness of their unsolved case. The gatherings are modest, typically attended by 15 to 20 people, family members, former colleagues, local search and rescue volunteers, and occasionally journalists or researchers interested in the case. Candles are lit. Photographs of the 3 rangers are displayed. Stories are shared about their lives, their dedication to their work, and the impact they had on those who knew them. The gatherings last approximately 1 hour. They are quiet, respectful events with no media spectacle or public controversy. Patricia Walsh attended the first 2 memorial gatherings before her health declined. In remarks she delivered at the February 9, 2021 gathering, 1 year after the disappearances, she said, "Gregory spent his life serving these mountains. He protected them. He monitored them. He respected them in ways most people never will. Whatever took him from me, it happened in the place he loved most. I find some small comfort in that. Not much, but some. I want people to remember that he wasn't a victim who lived in fear. He was a professional who loved his work. That's how I choose to remember him." Dr. Olivia Brennan's father, Dr. Raymond Brennan, has spoken at every memorial gathering since they began. His remarks have evolved over the years from expressions of grief and confusion to something closer to acceptance, though he maintains his conviction that the complete audio recordings contain information that has not been properly analyzed. At the February 9, 2024 gathering, 5 years after the disappearances, he stated, "My daughter was a scientist who believed in evidence and documentation. She would want this case solved through rigorous analysis, not abandoned because the evidence is difficult to interpret. I may not live to see answers found, but I hope someday someone will examine what happened at Blackwood with fresh perspective and the willingness to consider possibilities that make us uncomfortable." Amanda Hartley Cruz has organized and hosted every memorial gathering. She has become the primary public voice for the families, maintaining media contact and advocating for continued attention to the case. In an interview conducted in 2023, she explained her motivation. "If we stop talking about them, if we stop gathering to remember them, then they truly disappear. As long as people know their names and their story, they still exist in some way. That matters to me. It matters to all of us who love them. We won't let them be forgotten." 6 years after 3 experienced rangers vanished from a locked building in the Montana wilderness, the fundamental questions remain unanswered. Where did they go? If they left the station, how did they do so without leaving tracks in the snow, without taking essential survival gear, without triggering any emergency beacons or communication devices? If they didn't leave the station, where did they go? The building was thoroughly searched. No hidden spaces exist. No structural anomalies were found. 3 human beings cannot simply cease to exist within a confined space. What were the sounds captured on the audio recordings? The low-frequency tones that appeared throughout the evening? The voice at 12:34 a.m. that stated, "They are here," with acoustic properties that shouldn't be physically possible? the crystalline breaking sounds that occurred in reverse time sequence. Audio analysis confirmed these were real phenomena captured by functioning equipment, not artifacts or errors, but what created them. Why did the recording equipment stop functioning for exactly 6 hours? Every technical analysis concluded the device should not have stopped recording. No mechanical failure occurred, no electrical problem existed. The gap simply shouldn't exist, but it does. What happened during those 6 missing hours? What maintained the fire and prepared food after the Rangers vanished? The audio recordings from 6:17 a.m. to 2:34 p.m. on February 10th clearly capture sounds of ongoing activity, logs being added to the fire, kitchen activities, but no human voices, no footsteps, no breathing, no acoustic evidence of actual people performing these tasks. The search and rescue team arrived 3 days later and found the fire recently tended, breakfast ingredients laid out. Who or what was maintaining the station after its human occupants disappeared? Why Blackwood? The station's history of anomalous incidents spanning 43 years suggests something about that specific location, creates conditions where normal physical rules occasionally break down. But what? Geographic location? Geological features? Electromagnetic properties? No environmental surveys or scientific studies have identified anything unusual about the site that would explain the documented phenomena. These questions have no established answers. They exist as persistent mysteries that frustrate conventional investigation and resist standard explanatory frameworks. In the years since the official investigation concluded, independent researchers, amateur investigators, and individuals interested in unexplained phenomena have proposed additional theories attempting to account for the Blackwood disappearances. The temporal anomaly theory suggests that the location experiences periodic disruptions in normal time flow, potentially explaining the recording gap and the sounds of activity without human presence. Proponents point to the 2015 incident, where all clocks stopped at 12:42 a.m., the exact moment the recording equipment failed in 2019. Critics note this theory requires accepting the existence of time anomalies for which no scientific evidence exists. The dimensional threshold theory proposes that certain locations may serve as boundary points between our reality and others, and that under specific conditions, people can inadvertently cross those boundaries. This would explain complete disappearances without physical trace. Critics classify this as speculation without evidentiary support. The infrasound psychological theory suggests that naturally occurring infrasound at specific frequencies can induce hallucinations, panic, and irrational behavior. The low-frequency tones captured on the recordings might have affected all 3 Rangers simultaneously, causing them to take actions that led to their deaths in ways that explain the lack of bodies. Critics point out this doesn't account for the impossible voice recording, the activity sounds after the disappearances, or the lack of any remains within the extensive search radius. The classified military technology theory proposes that secret military or government testing of experimental technology occurred in the area, accidentally or deliberately targeting the station. This would explain the official reluctance to release complete audio files and the permanent closure of the facility. Critics note, there's zero evidence supporting military involvement, and that such a scenario would require conspiracy and cover-up at levels inconsistent with the documented investigation. The unknown predator theory suggests the existence of an unidentified entity or organism in the region that occasionally targets isolated humans. Historical incidents at the station would represent previous encounters. Critics note this requires accepting the existence of a completely unknown organism, despite extensive biological surveys of the region. None of these theories have gained acceptance from official investigators or mainstream researchers. They exist primarily in online discussions and independent investigation communities. They represent attempts to construct explanations where conventional investigation has failed to provide them. Dr. Catherine Wells, a forensic psychologist who reviewed portions of the case file as part of her research into wilderness disappearances, published an analysis in the Journal of Forensic Psychology in 2023. Her paper, titled "The Limits of Explanation: Psychological and Investigative Challenges in the Blackwood Station Case," examined why the case remained unsolved despite extensive resources devoted to investigation. Her conclusion: the Blackwood case presents a scenario where every conventional explanatory framework fails to account for significant portions of the documented evidence. Voluntary disappearance doesn't explain the lack of preparation or physical trace. Abduction doesn't fit the locked building and absence of access routes. Environmental factors don't account for the complete absence of remains. The audio anomalies resist technical explanation. When faced with such scenarios, investigators and researchers experience profound discomfort. Our cognitive frameworks demand coherent explanations. When none can be constructed that fit all evidence, we tend to focus on subsets of data we can explain while minimizing or dismissing data we cannot. This is a natural psychological response, but it prevents us from acknowledging the most challenging aspect of cases like Blackwood. Sometimes we simply do not have adequate frameworks to understand what occurred. Dr. Wells' paper generated limited discussion in forensic psychology circles, but was largely ignored by law enforcement and investigative communities. The conclusion that some cases may be fundamentally unexplainable with current knowledge was viewed as unsatisfying and potentially demoralizing for professional investigators. In September 2024, a long-distance hiker named Derek Morrison reached Blackwood Station during a solo trek through the Kootenay backcountry. He was unaware of the station's history and approached it simply as a landmark and potential shelter location. He documented his experience in a detailed blog post published 2 weeks after his hike concluded. Morrison arrived at the station in late afternoon. He found the main door locked but discovered a window that could be opened. He entered the building and spent approximately 2 hours inside, exploring the rooms and examining the abandoned equipment. His blog post describes the experience as deeply unsettling in ways I couldn't articulate. He noted that the interior was dusty and showed signs of 5 years of abandonment, but was otherwise remarkably well preserved. The furnishings remained in place. Personal items from the missing rangers were still visible in some rooms. Morrison chose not to spend a night inside the station despite deteriorating weather. In his blog post, he explained, "I'm not a superstitious person. I solo hiked for 15 years across some of the most remote terrain in North America. I've spent hundreds of nights alone in wilderness conditions. I don't scare easily. But something about that building made me profoundly uncomfortable. The silence inside was wrong somehow. Too complete, too heavy. I kept feeling like I was intruding on something, like I was being watched even though I was obviously alone. I stayed inside for maybe 2 hours total, and by the time I left, I was genuinely anxious to get away from that location. I hiked another 3 miles before making camp, even though it was getting dark and starting to rain. I just couldn't stay near that place." It was only after Morrison returned to civilization and researched Blackwood Station online that he learned about the 2019 disappearances. He added an update to his blog post. "If I'd known the history before I arrived, I probably wouldn't have entered the building at all. Knowing it now, I definitely won't return. Whatever happened there in 2019, that place carries something with it. I don't have better words for it than that. It's not a place people should be." Morrison's account is consistent with other unofficial reports from individuals who have visited Blackwood Station since its closure. The common thread, a profound sense of wrongness, of psychological discomfort that drives visitors away even when they cannot articulate specific reasons for their unease. The Blackwood Ranger Station case represents a category of mystery that challenges our fundamental assumptions about reality, evidence, and explanation. 3 people vanished under circumstances that should not be possible. Audio recordings captured phenomena that should not exist. A comprehensive investigation involving multiple agencies and extensive resources failed to provide definitive answers. The case forces uncomfortable questions. Are there limits to what we can know? Are there events that fall outside our ability to investigate and explain? Can evidence exist that points towards realities we don't have frameworks to understand? For the families of Gregory Walsh, Dr. Olivia Brennan, and Leon Hartley, these philosophical questions provide no comfort. They want answers. They want to know what happened to their loved ones. They want closure that may never come. For investigators who work the case, the lack of resolution represents professional frustration. They followed procedures, they analyzed evidence, they pursued every lead, and still, the case remains open with no clear path toward resolution. For the general public, Blackwood Station exists as a story, a mystery, a topic of speculation and theory. But for those directly affected, it represents an ongoing tragedy without end. The station still stands in the Montana wilderness. The door remains locked. The windows are dark. No smoke rises from the chimney. No lights move through the rooms. It sits in silence, holding whatever secrets it holds, offering no answers to anyone who asks. 3 experienced wilderness professionals vanished from a locked building 15 miles deep in the Montana mountains. No tracks led away, no bodies were ever found. No conventional explanation fits the evidence. Audio recordings captured sounds and voices that shouldn't exist, and 6 years later, no one knows what happened. The Forest Service maintains that the investigation remains technically open, but no active work is being done. The families continue to seek answers that may never come. The station sits empty and abandoned, a monument to a mystery that refuses to be solved. Some disappearances have explanations. Some mysteries eventually yield their secrets. Some questions eventually receive answers. The Blackwood Ranger Station case, after 6 years in exhaustive investigation, suggests that some mysteries may exist beyond our ability to solve them. Some questions may have answers we lack the frameworks to understand. Some places may hold secrets that refuse to be revealed. Blackwood Station is one of those places. If this story disturbed you, hit that like button. If you want more unexplained mysteries and true horror stories, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below with your theories about what happened at Blackwood. What do you think is really going on at that station? And if you ever find yourself hiking in northwestern Montana, in the deep wilderness of the Kootenai National Forest, and you see an abandoned ranger station standing alone in a clearing 15 miles from the nearest road, keep walking. Don't go inside. Don't spend the night nearby. Some places should remain undisturbed. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Thanks for watching.